Josh Espe, when are you gonna do the Lucia video? Listen, I wanted to do it in December and we all know how that went. I set aside a bunch of different projects to work on Virgil May Cry over here, including Lucia's video. No regrets. So trust me, I hear you guys, I just can't give a definitive date yet for that. But I will say, I did look into Lucia to start getting some notes together for a potential video, and I think she'd make a pretty good Devil May Cry waifu.
Now the fun begins. Juvenile.
Welcome back to Retrospective, the series where I look back on my old video analyses and respond to the comments. This retrospective is about my Lady's Guilt video. Kagero1009, quoting me at 1437, someone to unload the responsibility she placed on herself. Wacky woohoo pizza man
Royal sword trick on
sounds in the distance. What can I say? He's a man of many names and simple pleasures. David Crespo. There's also her character that I find rather fascinating. She's living it up with her demon hunting job, trying other styles of clothes, forming a friendship with Trish, and sticking Dante with the bill, adding to his already exorbitant debt. She's free from her need for revenge and is now partying it up as a coping mechanism to deal with the trauma, at the expense of Dante no less. Okay, can we talk about that? I'm glad to see Lady is now living her life how she wants to. I'm glad she's explored other interests, and I'm glad she's making friends. These are very positive steps towards self-growth. Her life is no longer consumed by anger and revenge. But putting Dante into even more debt without his consent is not one of them. That's not very cash money of you, Lady. You do not treat your depressed friends with debt, okay? That's America's job. I'm hoping she outgrew this by Devil May Cry 5 because the man's toilet doesn't even flush. Can you imagine living with that? A toilet you gotta keep using but can't flush? Yeah, sit with that for a bit. Blazing Beard. Is it bad that I burst out laughing anytime I see the scene where Lady kills Arkham? I know it's an emotional moment, but the way he screams no abruptly ended by gunfire reminds me of old Call of Duty videos where players get cut off.
Let's welcome chaos.
The Joe Effect. Your premise is faulty. Speaking as an abuse survivor, my father didn't need to be nice to me for me to feel conflicted over my resentment. He's my father, and the same applies here with Lady. This should be obvious, and if you have a background in psychology. I already responded to this person, but as far as I know, they have yet to reply. I told them that I welcome further discussion on the topic, especially coming from someone who resonates with the topic due to personal experience. If you're watching this, I welcome you to explain your perspective and what you would say contributed to your feelings of resentment in your personal experience. However, I also wouldn't want anyone to share something personal if they're uncomfortable doing so. It's your story, only you decide when and who to tell it to. Unbothered Chris. I never realized that Dante was trying to help her though. I never would have imagined Dante taking such a heavy role. I thought he was just trying to keep her safe because he knew that if Lady were to face Arkham in his uncontrollable Sparta form, she would die. I never understood that even up till now. Quality content, man, good stuff. First off, thank you for the compliment. Second, I wouldn't say Dante understood he was unloading Lady's burden on herself. I believe his motivations were exactly as you described. I think for him to fully understand what his help meant to her, he would have to know a lot of things about her past and make the connection on the spot. I'm not saying Dante is dumb, it's just that it takes time to understand people. However, I don't think this takes anything away from that scene. It mirrors real life in the way that sometimes we do things for people and don't understand the depth of what those actions mean to the other person. If anything, I feel like coming to this realization on our own only enriches the scene even more. Never Known. I love this series so much, as it's actually helped me get over some of my own personal issues. One small thing though, I do think that encountering Dante has a much bigger effect on her than people really give it credit for. If Lady hadn't met Dante, she wouldn't have had anyone to empathize with her during her crusade to kill her father, and would arguably be worse off, still trying to kill demons in order to feel whole. I say this from personal experience, though not to the extent of Lady, thankfully. Also, I think it might be possible that Arkham did care for Lady and Kalina Ann. I probably misspelled that. But became so wrapped up in his obsession with achieving power that Lady killing him really was a surprise. Speaking as someone who got out of a very abusive relationship, the abuser may not always realize what they're doing is hurting the people they care about. I know this is trying to justify the behavior as an obvious bad guy in the series, but you can never get a full grasp on these things without observing things from all perspectives. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Thank you for sharing your TED Talk. Yeah, just feeling seen and heard by someone else can be enough for those suffering. I can imagine it's even more impactful when it's someone who can relate to the experience. As for Arkham, I can understand wanting to observe things from all perspectives. For the most part, it's a good practice to be informed as much as possible about a situation. But I think when it comes to trying to help someone recover from a relationship like this, the primary focus is on the person doing the recovering. I don't think you're trying to justify his behavior, but rather understand it because, as it stands, we don't know much about Arkham to begin with. That knowledge is useful for spotting similar patterns in other relationships. However, what I always tell people about psychology is that just because you understand why someone does something terrible doesn't mean you excuse it. We just gotta keep that in mind. Abe Coltrane, 737. So this is referring to when I briefly flashed Joseph Joestar as like Father of the Year. 737, Uncle Iroh. Uncle Iroh is actually a really good pick too. Shit. I'm changing my answer, y'all. Uncle Iroh is the GOAT. Electric Blues. Before I show it, this person shared a pretty personal story. I left a comment asking if I could include it within this video, but they didn't respond. However, because it is a public comment, I think they will be okay with me featuring it in this video. Electric Blues. I have the same relationship with my father, minus the whole murdering, becoming a literal demon, and getting personal revenge. My mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and my father didn't want the emotional journey of that. Instead, he cheated and would gaslight her into thinking it was normal to use her illness for the sympathy and comfort from others. So they separated, and I gave up college at the time to take care of her. The thing is, he was financially supportive and tried to keep me out of the issues between them, unless it was to probe what I thought of him. Even though I thought he was a terrible human being, he did try to be a good father when it came to necessity. He would also occasionally look for my approval when it came to subject matters involving moral values. Like, he had this idea of lacking it in himself, and the people he hurt had better perspective of it. I think he's the worst and deserves the mental consequences. Yet, I can't altogether hate him. The dilemma eats me up sometimes when I think back on it. We've all moved on, and he's hardly in our lives anymore. Whether he's here or gone, it makes no difference. Scars are scars, and I'll always be conflicted with what is right or acceptable in my detachment from him, and the guilt I have when I think about how he helped support us, especially when my mother no longer could. I think these realistic concepts and characters are great for personal reflection, not just in representation, but coping. When I was too afraid to talk about my situation and feelings with others, emotionally writing along with characters with similar themes can be reasonably distressing. Lady is one of my favorite characters in that regard. Thank you for being comfortable enough to share a personal story like that. Take out the supernatural context of Devil May Cry, and you're left with a story about family. It's that human element that makes us feel more connected to these characters and stories, while slaying demons with a motorcycle chainsaw sword. I can understand how it may feel comforting to see an emotional conflict that you may be experiencing being represented in some sort of artistic medium. Often we may feel vulnerable and isolated during these moments. So when we see a story like Lady's, it's almost like indirectly saying, we see you, we get it. I'm not saying video games are a suitable replacement for therapy, but feeling as if you're being heard or acknowledged by someone is a basic human need, which art can sometimes satisfy for a moment, when it feels like no one else in the world will. Gabriela Silva. They all need therapy ASAP. Oh, yes. Devil May Cry 5 wouldn't even exist if Virgil just went to therapy. And Dante should too. Virgil's story is a very obvious cry for help, but we gotta watch out for Dante, cause I think he internalizes his shit. Like, I wouldn't dismiss his living conditions as only being due to his personality. It's possible for Dante to not feel much motivation to do anything more than hunt demons because of his trauma. Demon slaying and having a carefree attitude towards it could just be how he copes. His thrill for fighting was always there, and it's possible that he clung onto it after the incident. I can see it being the only way to really feel alive when you're dead inside. But that's just my unorganized thoughts on Dante. I've thought about redoing my video on him because I focused a lot on how he values his family and just really fanboyed over him the entire time. I didn't do much to highlight his trauma and how he responded to it, like I did with everybody else I made a video on. Lucas Plecott. All of these DMC analysis sagas, it's magnificent. The only detail is that in 525 you said that Lady's mother was the descendant from the priest that Sparta uses, but in Trinity of Fate it says that Arkham was the descendant. I've been trying to find this Trinity of Fate book that some of you have mentioned, but I haven't found a place online that shows the contents of it. But if that's true, then I guess I just assumed that it was Kalina Ann. I think the analysis still stands even with this detail. I can see Arkham wanting to use his offspring to avoid sacrificing his own blood. But even then, it didn't take that much blood from Lady since she was able to recover, so why wouldn't he just do it to himself? I'll just leave this one to you guys. And that's it for this retrospective. I'm sorry that this one took a while to get back to you guys. You know, this was one of the videos that I also pushed back to make room for the big Virgil May Cry project. But the series isn't over or anything like that, I just gotta get back to it. I'll be doing more retrospectives on other videos as well, it's not just going to be all about Devil May Cry. If you like my work and would like to support me directly, then consider buying me a coffee. Link is in the description. Whatever amount you can give is appreciated, but it is ultimately not necessary. Subscribing and sharing my videos are more than enough. And as always, my people, thank you for watching.